2020 Health and Human Service Committee minutes. Oh, sorry.
Hi.
Hey, we've got you on the conference call here.
Thanks. Thank you.
Welcome, Grandma.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, I can't find the live stream.
It just started.
I make that motion if I.
So if I'm at your YouTube page, where do I go?
It'll be live in a second.
I'll email.
Okay.
We have a couple presentations. First up is the Child Protective Services. And so we have Deanna Edick, Director of Services.
Get your thing up. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Gary, you wanna kick us off?
Thank you. Right, I was asked to just report out on the grant that we recently received that you may have heard about, and we'll also update on some other resources that have come our way. So we were fortunate. President Biden's American Rescue Plan was the funder of this grant. The initial awards are from the Emergency Rural Healthcare Grant, which totaled $43 million. Okay, so that's for the country. And there were 93 awards given. So 43 million, 93 awards. It was administered through the USDA. We applied last October because it was clear we had a revenue shortfall going into last year, and you know it's reported at each of your meetings, and that's done for Mr. Chartrand. So we applied for the grant. There were 4 of us on the team that applied, and we all had our sections, which is pretty typical for a grant. There was only one grant out of those 43 awarded in New York State, and we received the maximum award of $1 million. So the team did a great job. It covers revenue shortfalls for last year, and it'll flow through the operations this year and will lay to rest in our balance sheet under cash holdings. So strong award. You know, if you can be patient working with federal government, sometimes you hit pay dirt, and that was the case this time. Last week, or in the last week, I received a letter from the Friends of Lewis County Hospice.
Hey, Jenny, you gotta put us on mute.
Yep, sorry.
Here we go. No?
So, and I just want to take an opportunity, we're recognizing the federal administration, but we also should recognize a group of individuals who have been fundraising for the hospital for a long period of time, and that's the Friends of Lewis County Hospice. And yesterday we had a ceremonial check presentation of $150,000. Over the last 4 years, the Friends have presented us just shy of $500,000. So as equally impressive as the federal grant is also the impressive work of this group of local people committed to making sure hospice services stay in our community. Working with their board, they are quick to remind me whenever I have the stage or the platform to remind those I'm talking to. They have a fundraiser on May 1st at the Elks. It's the Epicurean for Life. The tickets have to be ordered in advance, and they're $40, and it's one of their primary fundraisers. So the Friends have just been good friends to Lewis County Health System. Lastly, we've also applied for a Congressional Earmark. Towards the end of March, Jenny's calling.
She's been a grandma for 1 hour. Hello.
Thanks.
Yep, sorry. Okay, you're good.
Thank you, Ryan. So we have applied to each of the federal elected offices. So Representative Stefanik, Senator Joan Brand, and Senator Schumer. It's essentially the same application with some nuances. So we've applied for an earmark of $4.5 million to help cover the cost of the equipment that will go in the new operating rooms. If we're fortunate to receive that grant, and we're not going to know for a period of time, it will actually reduce our need for the amount of bond that you need for us. So we'd be able to reduce the amount that we borrow. So as you know, whenever those opportunities come, it's a nice opportunity and we should grab. So thank you, Lisa, for asking for the update. But so some good news and potentially more good news down the road. If there are any questions, I'll answer them now.
No, that's perfect. Thanks for coming.
Great, thank you, and have a great afternoon.
We're good, thank you.
Are we all set for Deanna? Wherever you want to be.
Come on out.
Yeah.
Actually,
Probably in the room, but you know.
all right, so today I was asked to come and talk about Child Protective Services. I brought along Sherry Barr, who's our CPS supervisor, Santi's there, who's a CPS caseworker. She's actually our most senior caseworker. All our other caseworkers have less than a year, less than maybe 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years, so. She's
Not
one
too
of our
much
most
pressure on you.
senior caseworkers. Someday. So I just gonna briefly go through what Child Protective Services are, kind of our process, what our caseload currently is in Lewis County, and then a recent review that the Office of Children and Family Services did with us. Final report came out in January 2022. There's been a lot of news in the, about Oswego County, some of the other surrounding counties, so we'll just kind of give you an overview of what we do. So in CPS, everything that we do kind of starts with a phone call. And that's the phone call to the 1-800 numbers, which will be commonly referred to as the hotline. So there's 2 phone numbers. There's one for the general public and one for mandated reporters. The call center is actually in Albany. It's a big building with tons of people in it, and they answer the phone 24/7. They're the ones that actually determine if it's a report that we can then investigate. So once they determine if it's a report that is acceptable, then they send it to the local districts. And we have to be able to receive those reports 24/7, which is why we have our caseworkers in the services unit do on call. So anytime we're not open for business, there's an on-call worker available for these reports. So for the regional SCR to accept a report, there have to be 3 criteria met. So the allegations, if true, have to constitute the abuse or neglect standards that are found in family court law along with social services law. Not only that, we need a person who is the subject to be the parent, the guardian, or other person legally responsible. A lot of times people want to call in, their ex for custody matters. Unless they're person legally responsible for the children that have been abused or maltreatment, the report can't be accepted. The third thing we obviously need is jurisdiction in New York. And more specifically, when it comes to us, jurisdiction in Lewis County. We get a lot of phone calls. We used to get a lot of phone calls for Livingston County. They would mess up Lewis and Livingston. We'd have to send reports back and say, yeah, this is in our county. We get a lot of cross counties, especially between Oneida, St. Lawrence, and Jefferson County. We have families that live half in Jefferson, half in Lewis, and we coordinate with the other counties to make sure everybody is seen and get the services that we need. So as I said, we have two sections of law, family court and social services, and those are the sections of the law that deem what abuse and neglect are. So abuse is your severe physical. It can be fatalities if it gets into that category. Sex abuse, obviously. Neglect is the other category where it's more inadequate guardianship, lack of supervision, Fatalities at time will fall into that section for lack of supervision and guardianship, if it meets that criteria. In January, there was a big change for us. Prior to January, all of our cases were deemed credible evidence, meaning all we had to have was evidence worthy of belief. In January, they moved it to fair preponderance. Now, when we investigate, we have to determine, is there more evidence to prove the allegation than there is to not prove that? So now we have caseworkers who have to balance and give weight to information, give weight to the evidence, just like they do in family court. So that was a big learning curve for us in January, to learn how do we do that. The other two things that are important when we determine can we unfound or indicate a case is the causal connection. You always need a connection between that parent, person legally responsible, or guardian, and the effect that it had on the child. So if we can't put the causal connection together, we don't have enough to indicate the report. And we always need a negative impact on a child. Sometimes we have risk and not necessarily an impact. And so we have to be real careful. Do we have all three criteria when we're indicating reports? This slide is just to walk through what the Cps investigations require. We have to respond within 24 hours. Safety of all children listed on the report. A lot of times when the reports come in, they don't necessarily list all the children in the household. So we get out there and the report might say there's 2 kids in the household, and we end up finding there's 5 kids. So we add all those kids to the report. We have to do safety assessments on those kids. Add in the additional parents that might not be in the household. So our reports kind of become bigger once we get out there. We contact the source of the report to get more information. We review any prior reports that there might be in the system, including anything out of state. We have a lot of transient people. They move from state to state, and we have to get that information from the previous states they resided in. Face-to-face interview with everyone. That's a requirement. We gather information from collaterals, a lot of service providers, especially in our county. That's mental health, CRADO, medical personnel, law enforcement, complete a 7-day safety assessment, and then document if a safety plan is needed. We always do home visits to assess the safety of the household. So when we're out in the homes, we're not only looking for clean and sanitary conditions, but we're also looking for safe sleeping conditions. Do they have weapons? Do they have drugs? So we're really looking at what's accessible to the children that can possibly cause the child harm. We determine if court involvement is necessary. If we have to do a removal, obviously we're in contact with our attorney. We're going to court. Usually within a day, if it's an emergency removal, we don't have much time. The court has to approve it. Judge King has to say, yep, we agree with it. Kid can stay in foster care. We've never had the judge disagree with us, but if that were to happen, the kid would have to go back home. We have 60 days to complete our investigation and implement the services that are needed. So we're really on a tight frame. There's no wiggle room really. The regs say it's 60 days and you're to complete your investigation. And during all those 60 days, we're documenting everything that we do. It's becoming to the point where documentation almost means as much as face-to-face work that we're doing with families, which is a real downfall for us because really the work is working with the families. But it's to the point now that we're documenting as much as we're working with the families. So in our CPS unit, we have 1 supervisor. We have normally 5 caseworkers. We currently have 1 vacancy. We're a little bit in a panic right now. We don't currently have a good civil service list. And the one that we had scheduled, we had an interview scheduled for Wednesday, and she called and canceled because she found other employment.
I would venture that we've had pretty much at least 1 vacancy almost consistently.
Yes,
Since I've been here.
Since Sherry started as supervisor, yeah, it's been a high turnover.
Pretty much been 4
Or less.
or less,
Or
yes.
less.
So rule of thumb, we always used to go by a caseworker can complete 100 reports a year. We're finding that's becoming more and more difficult just because of the complexity of the families that we deal with. You know, back in the day, it was marijuana and alcohol. Now it's meth, cocaine, and whatever else they can, use. Weapons were a hunting rifle stashed behind the door. Now it's handguns and, whatever else we might come across. So the complexity of the families has increased a lot. So that rule, I'm not sure that we can always meet that, depending on the families. I think this is the most important slide of the whole presentation. So on average, we do about 500 reports a year, which has been consistent in the last 5 years, which you can see the red line is the number of overdue reports that we have. And you'll notice that they tend to spike up when our workers carry more than 15 investigations. The state really likes us to stay under 15 investigations per worker. It's really difficult to handle much more than that. 15 cases is a lot. And you'll also notice the green line on top is timely safety assessments. When workers are carrying more than 15 cases, our safety assessments tend to go down, which makes sense because, that's when, we can't get stuff done timely because we're responding to the reports as they keep coming in.
I think this is an important slide because what you've heard in the news from some other counties, and not, to name names or point fingers, but we've heard that there's counties that have each caseworker covering upwards of 40 cases. So that's when the ball starts to get dropped. And we're very fortunate that we've been able to balance that quite well.
Yes. And we do at times in our county, when cases do start coming in and we do get overloaded, we tend to transition other caseworkers to CPS. We call it the overflow. All of our caseworkers are trained in CPS, so we move some people to carry that extra weight when we're out so that we don't have those situations where we can kind of handle it. It's difficult going, because you're then doing work in 2 different units, which some workers can do it, others find it very difficult to step, on both sides of that line, so. But yes, we just actually had a transfer. We hired somebody that transferred from Jefferson County and she left with a caseload of 40. So. And then the last few slides is the quality assurance review done by OCFS. They did it in 2021. The final report was given to us in January of this year. The good news, there were no investigations referred back with safety concerns, so they didn't have anything for us to reinvestigate, which is always a good thing. And there were no investigations with significant gaps in casework activity. So they didn't see any of those major gaps that we, didn't do anything on the case. They identified our strengths as, we're good at assessing risk, services, and safety. We address concerns with the family. Documentation is detailed and thorough, and we have many documented supervisory consults. There were a couple of areas of improvement needed that we've been working on collateral contacts for a couple of years. With documenting CPS history checks within 1 business day, that's an actual regulation. We're supposed to document it within 1 business day. The issue with that is just the documentation. It gets done, it just doesn't get in our progress notes. So we're working on that. Safety factors at determination. There were a couple of cases they felt we should have had another additional safety factor. We might have tended to argue with their conclusion. Was it really a safety factor or is it risk? We get into those conversations sometimes. And then collateral contacts. What we're finding is we reach out to collateral contacts to get information, but we're not timely in addressing those issues. So it might be day 30 and we talk to Credo and they tell us, well, he hasn't gone to his appointment in a week and a half. And then it's 2 weeks before we get to that, or 3 weeks before we get to that. But again, that's all timing and how many cases they're working on, how many cases they have working on. So again, the factors that support good casework and that I think we do well in our county, obviously the low caseloads, Consistent case practice, we train all 5 CPS workers the same, we ask them to do things the same, right down to how do you put your file together at the end when you close and determine a case. Sherry does weekly case conferences with her crew. We do record checks at 30 days, so every 30 days, the supervisor's looking at that case and talking to the worker about what more needs to be done. We have good collaboration with our Child Advocacy Center and Law Enforcement Investigations. Any sex abuse case, any severe physical, it's always going to go through the CAC. And we have MDT meetings regularly to review those cases specifically. And we collaborate with the regional office. They come up and do quarterly site visits and ongoing monitoring assessment reviews. And we're not afraid to ask the regional office for help. That's one thing that we have always been very vocal about, is if we're not quite sure in a case, we'll reach out to the regional office and ask for their assistance. The last few slides is just directly from the report. This is kind of our report card per se. So green and yellow are good. So gathering case-related information, decision-making, and service provision, case planning. This is where the red is our history, the documentation of the history, the reviews. Safety factors at determination. This is the one where there were 2 cases, they felt additional safety factors should have been added. Again, we would have kind of questioned that, were they safety or were they risk? And that's always a struggle sometimes when they're doing audits. Are they? And then the last one that we got the red on was the information from collaterals addressed timely. So overall, it was a very good review. So that was my presentation.
So Deanna won't, brag and Jenny, is fairly humble, but when we get these reports back, we also get, kind of oral feedback from the state and whatnot, and these scores are very good, very good across the state.
And if I can answer it just from the legal side, that Sherry and her team, and also Adult Protective Services and Preventive, they really are exceptional, passionate people for the work they do, and it's difficult at best. But they fight on behalf of those kids every step of the way, even when sometimes legal says, are you really gonna file on that? But, and that's part of the reason why I think that they are so exceptional, is that they will push and they know when to push, and they take the right steps to protect those kids every step of the way.
So we've got Sherry and Santi here. If they, you guys have any questions for them as well, anything that they experience in the field, or anything that you guys are, willing to share to kind of shed a little more light on, how things, what it's like out there. So, you guys have any questions or?
No, this one's very nuanced and complicated, and, especially with the new requirements that were just in January. Police investigators, I don't understand how you manage all of that, so, hats off to you. Why do you think there's a high turnover besides the obvious?
Well, let's start with the obvious.
I think there's probably a lot of factors that go into that. I don't think a lot of the people that come into the job really understand what it entails and what it's going to be like day to day. I would say that it's a difficult job. You never know what you're going to run into, and nothing is black or white. Everything is gray. So I think just overall, it's a hard job.
I think it really takes a special, maybe almost twisted mind to survive this job. And sometimes you adapt to it, sometimes you don't. You really gotta find that 1 in a million person that can really kind of handle it, I guess.
we did through the last CSEA contract, increase the grade for child protective unit for all the caseworkers. So I think we're trying to address, difficulty in recruiting through that as well. These folks have to have bachelor's degrees and they're doing very specialized work, like you said, almost like police investigations, going into homes and environments that potentially, often are unsafe. So I think, we also have to look at, compensation and making sure that we're appropriate for people with those levels of skills.
So Deanna, with the change of the law in January, for all of you actually, are you seeing any change in what you're indicating or coming to the conclusion that something is indicated?
I think we're gonna find that we're gonna unfound more reports than what we've indicated in the past. Certainly those educational neglect cases,
Yeah.
those inadequate guardians where, you're kinda on the line,
Right.
but we used to indicate them because there was enough worthy of belief evidence. Now you gotta have more than what you don't have,
I
so.
bet it's because, my guess is because family court in other parts of the state is overwhelmed. They're trying to maybe
Well,
cut
in
back on
our
their caseload.
fair hearing, there was always a fair hearing issue because when we indicated a case, subjects always had the right to fair hear. So we would indicate a case on credible evidence, they would fair hear at fair preponderance. So the cases would always get unfounded in the end. So I think now they've kind of leveled that off so that there's not so much,
Maybe there'll be less fair hearings now.
Right.
Any questions?
No, thank you for all you do.
Thanks for coming.
No, it's not easy.
Next up, we have Lisa Hetzner, to go over the postgraduate fellowship program. Well, I'm just gonna follow me in a suit.
Great. We're going up the other slides here.
Mine is substantially shorter. So we'll give Deanna all the photos right now.
Hopefully it's here.
Mine is a different, happier feel. I'm Lisa Hetzner, and I'm here to present on the post-graduation fellowship program that we are working on using the ARPA funds. See how I do. So I wanted to just provide a little background on this career pathway that we started a few years ago when we started partnering with the Pratt Foundation for careers here. So my office has always done a summer youth program with TANF funding, and that's been established for well over 20 years. But the purpose of internships, and especially our summer youth program, is to get kids working early, establish work ethic, and teach some of those basic skills. So everything that's on there about skills, mentorship, and experience starts early, which is why economic development is holding meetings, and we're working with the schools now about introducing work to students young, introducing internships. So how do we get to where we are now? So 20 years at least, the state has been working with departments like ours. We run a little differently than other departments of social services because we keep it internal, but we run summer youth employment, SYEP. I bet you many folks in this room are familiar with it. We place students in a lot of our offices, and this targets young adults between 14 and 20. And the idea, it's low income. You have to meet an income threshold up to 200%. I was just reporting to Jenny today that actually a good portion of our applicants every year come off our SNAP outreach. So parents who are working. And what I've been working on with my team in the last few years, because I have children, is work looks differently, not just because of COVID, but having had teenage babysitters who didn't want to work 25 or 30 hours a week while I was working. And so I started to kind of look at what does work look like for young adults. So with our summer youth program, we started putting on younger students and saying, do you want to work 12, 15 hours a week. So we're introducing the concept of work early. We're meeting part-time work standards. Some employers don't need a student 25 or 30 weeks. So we more than doubled our partnerships with private sector, and we're putting on more students by using this part-time component of it, because students can balance summer school and just being young kids with work. We also administer out of my office a WIOA out-of-school youth program. You can see there's overlap, but this focuses on ages of 16 to 24 with students and youth that have barriers. So if they're going to school, that's great. We're going to capture them in another program. But if they have left school, we want to focus on trying to re-engage them. So they have to have a barrier. This isn't every barrier, but being married and parenting and under 24 is considered a barrier for New York State and offense. So we work with that population of people if they have any attachment to the juvenile or adult justice system, haven't completed their GED or high school equivalency. I'm not sure if many of you are familiar, but what replaced the old GED was incredibly difficult, and I don't think I could have passed that. So I'm glad to see GED is coming back. I think we'll have more success with that. Students and young adults with addiction, foster care, and we do quite a bit of work with individuals with disabilities. So this population has different funding. We partner with Jefferson County on this. We share our funding with them, and we can put a youth in what we call a work experience. So we can pay all of the funding for them. So if they don't have any attachment to the workforce, I would consider WEP to be something similar to an internship. We're going to pay and cover all the funds for, let's say, up to 12 weeks. And our focus is really on, did you go to work on time? What did you learn? Basic training, skill sets that many of folks would assume by the time someone is 18, they know how to do. But as a parent, I'm going to tell you there's no magic wand that my 17-year-old who turns 18 this week will have suddenly amassed every skill that I would like him to have because he's now 18. And we find that with lots of young adults. There's gaps in their histories. So this is a really great program for folks that are being challenged with a barrier for us to help. And then some of our youth, and we've had great success in private partnership. We placed a young adult at Brown's and we did a work experience. It turned into a full-time job, and they're big on career ladders, so we could send him back to school in order to get the electrical and HVAC components that they were looking for. And it's just this career building. So that's what it's really nice. So all these programs target different populations. There's not enough funding to target all the kids. But I think for those kind of, we do a nice job. Now, careers here. This is that segue that I believe led us to this postgraduate fellowship. So we partnered with Pratt Northam a few years ago. This is a student-driven program. There's two components. During lunch today, I was talking to a BOCE student because there's no school today, and it worked out for both of us. And we were talking about what's next. What are you going to do? He's going to end up working for Jackie, I do believe, for the summer at Recreation and Trails, and we can make that connection to his ultimate career path. So I don't put on as many students as I would like, but we are working on that. And then the rest of it's focused on college students. Typically those sophomore to junior summers, and then the summer from junior to senior year, with the goal to make connections with Lewis County businesses. It's not a requirement to come back to the North Country, but many of our kids want to. So my goal is to get them connected with a business that might actually lead to a job for them. And we have seen successes over the years that have come out of this program. With the students do the work. So with the young man I was talking to today, I said, I need you to call and talk back to Jackie. He said, okay. So the college students, it's a little different. I expect a lot more. They're at that level when they're at college. And I'm really lucky. These are fantastic kids that are driven and they're smart. And I learn from every single one of them every year. So I'm really thankful that I get to take part in that. In some of the takeaways that I've had in the last few years were how do we start to really use the skills that kids have to segue to good internships into jobs. And so I just want to talk briefly about EMT. You know, there's a lack of EMTs, in the North Country. So I had a student a few years ago who worked at Lewis County General. She became a phlebotomist, and that started to open my eyes. And I had a student who was an EMT. So I started sharing with my kids, oh, you want to work in the medical field? Consider phlebotomy, consider EMT. I have a good chance of putting on several new EMT students. They got their certificate, and our search and rescue is willing to work with them. So it fits their career paths. One of them wants to be a physician's assistant, one wants to be a doctor. But we're putting kids where there's need, and they're making connections here, and at the end, most of them want to come home. So this is really good mentorship, and they're getting really great references. So with Careers Here, I think that's that piece where businesses and economic development work with me to place the kids. But then the question became, what's next? So as a parent of a soon-to-be senior, and once I worked in the workership part of Careers Here, or Pratt Northam. What do you do when you get done in college in May? Many of you probably have nieces, nephews, grandchildren, friends that you know, your kids come home, and you're thrilled your kids have graduated, and now you need to get a job. So that's that summer where kids end up staying at home and maybe doing a job because they're job searching. They're looking for the one that will help them pay back their student loans or get them to the city they want to move to. I want to jump on that. North Country kids that want to come home want to stay here, but we're missing the opportunities to tell them there are businesses you can partner with and you can do this here. And so that's where the fellowship comes into play. Here are the goals. We want to retain skilled young adults. We know that there's gaps, and we needed to create a pipeline. Economic development has done a fabulous job of really showcasing that, and how do we grow? Because the ultimate goal is Lewis County can't fund everything, private foundations can't fund everything. How do we get businesses to start to grow their own pipeline by engaging in internships? We can pave that path for them, and we can show them the benefit to that. So here's what we're looking for program expectation. It still follows a similar model to Careers Here in that it's driven by the students. And for example, I've got a couple of engineering students. I know there's a need for engineering, so I've been looking for that. And like that would be a good placement to start us off. It's solid. I've got a student right now in Careers Here, and my mind is running. Could he be like a student next summer that could be in that postgraduate fellowship? Instead of leaving after he graduates from Clarkston, can we get him back for the employer he just worked for? You know, they're delighted. They've done their onboarding. We've saved them money because the program is paid for. So we want to keep kids here, but we want them to drive where they want to go. So targets need to be Lewis County residents or working for a Lewis County business, because I think we need to still look at that regional approach. You may choose to live in Lewis County, but maybe work for a business in Jefferson, St. Lawrence, or Oneida County because you're not unwilling to drive. So I think we should consider the fact that it's about either the resident benefiting because they're in Lewis County, they're spending their dollars. I would love to see it be a Lewis County business, but I don't want to miss good youth in our region staying, and I think that's important. Focus on those in-demand occupations. What's needed today, like what's needed in the medical field, may not be needed 5 years from now. So we need to be adaptable and be able to look at what is the need at the time. That's where economic development really comes in. They have those conversations with businesses about what's the need. And we will work with economic development on this program on choosing the best candidate and the best businesses that we think we're going to get good outcomes for. And of course, we'll add an evaluation component of performance. We want to see good outcomes come. I feel very confident that if I can place a student in an internship that leads to a job when you're in college, then we can successfully place the right candidates post-graduation in businesses here where they'll stay for a few years and grow those business connections. And that is our hope for the post-graduation fellowship. Thank you. Do y'all have questions?
You had mentioned that you didn't work with BOCES much. Is there a reason?
I would tell you it's a time issue for me. I manage Careers Here by myself, and although we are bringing on staff to help decrease some of that frontline supervision that I do, it's outreach, it's being able to get out in the schools. I don't know if Jackie's back here because I felt like people were looking. Hey, Jackie. Jackie does a great job advocating for herself, and I will tell you, her students, they'll have a good summer. And they know what they're getting into. They work hard, and it's a hard job. They show up early, and it's sweaty in the summer. But they know what they're getting, and they can make the tide of their career path. I haven't seen that in other sectors with BOCES. And I think it's just getting into the classrooms and getting those professors to send students back to us. We've made some headway in automotive there, but not the growth I would like to see. And COVID didn't help, as this program was really growing when we took it over. COVID happened. So
I think an example of what Lisa's saying is when kids reach the end of BOCES, they have to go out for an internship through BOCES. And we've taken some of those students in. An electrical student has come to work for our maintenance department. we're not letting that kid touch any electrical things, right? Whereas a heavy equipment operator is walking out with certificates and ability to do some stuff for Jackie. You know, the electric folks have more certifications they have to get. The mechanical folks, you know, the same way. We have somebody go with probation. One of the criminal justice kids typically gets with probation. Probation does a great job of them, but they're not helping the county so much as we're providing a service, I think, to the student in BOCES. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit harder depending on which program.
I think what you hit on much better than I did, Ryan, was that our businesses though are very willing to work with the students and provide the mentorship piece and give them an opportunity to get some hands-on. And that's where I thought I would face difficulty, and I'm not. People really buy into community, and all throughout corners of the county, I have businesses that are willing to take on students and understand they can't come in, they can't do everything, but how do you plant a seed and how do you develop someone to be a future employee?
So one connection that was maybe we didn't.
I will say I get most of mine word of mouth between the kids. Either the kids talk about what they get to do, what, you know, what's involved. They line up their friends. Every year I get a few more from last year, so it works great for me.
And my student at noon told me that, he'd been talking to a placement from last year. And that's how Careers Here works too.
So our goal with the fellowship program is to basically expand Careers Here. You know, right now it cuts off at the college age, expand it to age 26, post-college graduates, try to get that demographic that is, you know, statistically, and Lisa and I ran out of time, but we wanted to put the 2020 census results up there and show that that is the specific demographic that we're losing the most in Lewis County. So using our American Rescue Plan funds, a small portion of them, to target that demographic and try to keep some of these talented, educated professionals in our community, and show them that, you know, there is a life here, you can work in your field here, you know, establish a little bit of some social roots in Lewis County, and hopefully, you know, even once the program expires, they'll choose to stay here in Lewis County. So that's the thought process.
We've got $50 million to keep us in the hospital and into projects. It's a lot of contractors in this county. I would suggest looking into that. I helped BOCES last fall. My grandson was out there in electrical. The problem there, I'm not a teacher, but from what I saw, they want the student to start out finding the job employment. 16, 17, 18-year-old does not know how to do that. They're so nervous when they walk in. So I found all the contractors for them to go deal, and I left them a list of them for this year. So some of that's even helpful with getting them into the programs. And some of the businesses that when I first talked to them said, "Oh, no way," they were the best ones at the end because they eyes got opened with it.
I have found as I worked through this, I talked to a lot of high school seniors who say, Careers Here may not be ready, you just need a job. And I plant the seed for next year, but I connect them to available jobs that they could do this summer. And yes, with BOCES, I handpick and work with them on, it's Lewis County. If your aunt, your uncle, your mom and dad know someone, it's enough for you to get your foot in the door. You have to prove yourself and you have to sell yourself. But it makes that handoff easy because you're right, kids are not accustomed, adults struggle. So why would we expect a young adult to know how to do this? Well, we talk a lot about that, and there's growth, and you can see from the kids and what they've learned. And I'm really thankful for businesses because, as Ryan said, it's a huge investment if anyone is a business owner to know how much time and energy it takes to bring on an intern who's maybe not doing anything for you, but the investment is what will you get 5 years or 10 years down the road.
Ryan, this is Jenny. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I would think back to Lisa's question about BOCES is to remember Careers Here identifies how many BOCES students we can work with within that funding stream. So there's kind of a cutoff. It can't be, they give us so many slots for BOCES kids.
Oh, yeah, good point. Yep. And Jackie takes half of them.
We play fair. But
I'm also willing to take the ones that can't find placement, so.
They work hard, so I don't have a problem. It's a good summer occupation to work with Jackie.
Maybe that'll work, Jackie. Any other questions?
Hope you like that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think we can move on to the dockets. Okay, the first one is authorizing agreement between Lewis County Office for the Aging and Lewis County Opportunities to serve as administrator of the Aging in Place Home Modification Program application. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed, nay? Carries. Authorizing modification to agreements between Office for the Aging and Frederick McManus, DBA McManus Hotel, and Osceola Outpost LLC. Any discussion?
This is the one that's a renegotiation of the price per meal.
Yes.
Okay. No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Carried. Appropriating funds in the Office for the Aging accounts to reflect additional New York State aid for unmet needs in the amount of $85,000. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Authorizing agreement between Lewis County Public Health Agency and Countryside Veterinarian Clinic for rabies control coordinator and clinics. Any discussion?
I have a question, under section 3, it gives dollar amounts, is that per year? It doesn't, I didn't see any place where it said timeframe.
Yeah, it's for the number of clinics that are held for the year. So you'll see that, I forget what the number is, I think it's like 7 in the month of May or something.
Right,
Yeah.
it says, shall be compensated the sum of $2,100 for services of, Dr. Baker.
Right.
But it doesn't say whether it's, the agreement looks like it goes through 2024,
Mhm.
but there's no time frame. I can't see.
So these are the actual payments, Jeff, for the clinics that are held in May
Okay.
of each of those years. Yeah.
Okay, so this is a per year.
Yeah, right.
Okay, I just
for
didn't see where it
those,
said
for
this
those
was
months, right?
per year or per.
Yeah.
The whole time thing. That's the only question I have.
And we were going to, I don't know if it has the locations this year, but West Leiden, we typically go to.
Yes, West Leiden's May 5th or 6th.
Right, Osceola is the one that we.
Right. We're gonna go to this year too.
You still doing Osceola?
I'll have to look at the schedule, but I'm pretty sure.
I haven't heard otherwise, so. must be.
They'll let us know.
Yeah, so we usually do one in January, about 7 in May, and then one in September. Those are the clinics, but then we also contract for Dr. Seeger's services in consultation on rabies cases, as well as testing of animals that have had human contact or other animal contact.
I don't have a problem with that, I just didn't see the time frame.
Oh, good question.
Any other discussion?
It's one of those services that people don't realize the county does.
But we need.
Yep.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Appointing Dr. Sarah Ziegler to the Lewis County Health Services Advisory Board from April 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2025. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Authorizing renewal agreement between Lewis County Department of Social Services and Cornell Cooperative Extension of Lewis County for parent education services. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Authorizing videographer services between Lewis County Community Services and Tyler Kellogg and Jordan Mancuso for mental health media marketing in the amount of $6,500. Any discussion?
We brought this up because when Tyler was here a couple months ago, the board made a motion to do $5,000 more, and the bill came back in at $6,100 more or whatever, so we wanted to do it. to make sure that you guys understood and did a full resolution.
Yeah, so these are the videos that one was released yesterday, and they're going to be released every Monday. I don't know if anyone has seen that, I'm not going to the my website, but they're, in my opinion, they're worth all of it. Yeah, more, but let's not hold on that.
Sure they know.
Yeah. Any other questions? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And do we have any executive session? Just need a motion, during the Public Human Services Committee.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Hey, Patrick. How are you?
Dick, I
Committee meeting to order. Can I get a motion to accept the March 15, 2022 meeting minutes as recorded?
Second.
Second by Dick. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Motion carries. We have one presentation today by Matt Morrow, our probation director. Go ahead, Matt.
They're gonna be right behind you, kind of way behind.
Where is it, right here? Forward is the big button, I take it.
We'll find out.
Where do I point at you?
That comment.
Okay. So I just did a brief little update on the probation department. First, what is probation? Probation is a sentence or disposition to community supervision. That's kind of what we're all about, community supervision. It can be a sentence from criminal court or a disposition from family court. For our younger offenders, not the right term, but adult court, it's criminal court. For 18 and below 18 is family court. Typically, probationers are sentenced to probation without serving incarceration or imprisonment. That's not always the case. Sometimes our felonies, they have what's called a 6-5 split, 6 months in jail and then 5 years of probation. Probation is a state mandated county function. With that mandate comes a whopping $80,000 from the state in a block grant. So it's a largely unfunded county mandate, but we are a mandated department. And the State Office of Probation and Correctional Alternatives provides oversight to us, to all the county probation departments. Our staff, we're a small staff. I'm the director. Sarah Bush is our senior probation officer. She does our pretrial release, and she's also our transfer designee. So we have interstate transfers between the states and intrastate transfers between the counties. We clearly here, we don't have a lot of people moving into Lewis County from out of state. We do, I think there's one right now, probably. And I think we have one that was sentenced here and moved to a different state. So we have a lot of bounce back between Jefferson, Oneida, St. Lawrence County. We have a lot of movement back and forth. So we're transferring them, their supervision in or out. Lisa Rennie is not here today. She has a mental health background, so a lot of our mental health cases we try to assign to her. Marcus Spalding dressed up to testify at court today and didn't have to, so he's just looking good for us here today. He does our drug court. Right now our drug court numbers are pretty low. We'll get to that in a moment. Kylie Simpson's our newest officer. She is our juvenile officer. We promised her that we had really small numbers, and then with Raise the Age, our numbers are going up a little bit. And Kay Sabo's back in the office. She's our administrative assistant. She's the friendly face that runs the office. So currently, I think this was on our the update that I gave all the legislators too. Right now, I came up with 173 adult probation cases. We have 12 juvenile cases. We monitor 17 DWI conditional discharges. That's a function that not every county probation department has it. I think it was probably 5 or 6 years ago, the state came in. The DA's office used to do it, and the state said they would prefer us to do it, so we took that on. We have about 4 pretrial release cases, 4 drug court cases, but I don't know how super accurate that is, because drug court, there aren't a lot of drug court cases right now. That's one of the cases that he was supposed to testify about today. So I got these numbers from the state. At the end of 2021, we had 182 active probation cases. It's about 50-50, 49.5% were felony offenses, 50% were misdemeanors. One was listed as an other. I'm not really sure what that
You
other.
could guess that name, but
So 50/50 felony and misdemeanor. This is also from the state. We had 15 sex offenses, about 10% of our caseload. DWI and driving while ability impaired, which is more of a drug-related charge, is about 30% of our caseload, and about 5.5% were violent felony offenses. Some numbers from juvenile delinquency intake. So the end of 2018, October of 2018 was when 16-year-olds went out. They became no longer, they went, I guess, back into juvenile delinquency is a better way to term it. They went out of adult court and back into juvenile in October. So our 2019 numbers went up a little bit. At the end of 2019, the 17-year-olds went out. So our numbers are going up a little bit, but not a huge amount. I think my next slide I actually say that. I shouldn't say this, but we're really fortunate right now that Raise the Age hasn't had a big impact on us. But if and when we do have to utilize detention, it's going to be a big challenge for us. There's very few beds statewide. They are extremely expensive beds. And then it's just a huge cost to us because it's us that would have to transport them. You know, Jefferson County is taking kids to Westchester, and then for every court appearance, that's another trip of 2 officers down to Westchester, back to court, then back to the facility after court. And it's a big safety concern too. From what I'm hearing around the state, the juveniles seem to be most rowdy with probation officers. A little bit of 2-year trends. This is from the state as well. In March of 2020, we had an active caseload of 223. March of this year, that number was down to 186. So that's about a 17% decrease. Statewide numbers, the numbers are down about 22.3%.
that was all during the height of COVID. Do you
COVID.
think that had a?
Yeah, I'm thinking it's COVID related mostly. There were a lot of court closures during that time period. And also bail and discovery reform, I think probably plays a little bit of a role in that as well. Pretrial release, our numbers are down after bail reform. Just a lot of people are getting appearance tickets now. What a lot of
You
jurisdictions.
explain what pre-trial release is.
Pretrial release. So in the olden days, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, people would get arrested, you'd go to jail. And then Sarah would go to the jail every morning. She would start her day at the jail at 8 o'clock and interview people to see if they could get out on a pretrial release program. So you didn't get out of jail by paying bail, you would get out under a probationary release with some supervision.
Were there criteria that they had to meet?
Yeah, if they were local, if they had a job, if they had family, if they weren't being a flight risk, if they weren't at a high risk for recidivism, like believe another crime, you got out of jail. The trade-off was if you didn't have bail money, that you have to.
So these are people already deemed eligible for bail and just couldn't pay it or couldn't get the bonds for it or something like that.
Yeah, they would be sent to jail on bail, and then the next morning we would interview them. But now you get arrested for a felony offense. Most felony offenses are non-bailable now, so you're just getting an appearance ticket and out the door you go. Statewide, though, we're not really seeing that in Lewis County, but statewide, a lot of judges are they can't put them in jail on monetary bail, but they're still putting probationary release conditions on a non-bailable offense, which puts probation in a very precarious spot because, we're being scrutinized that Ryan's out on pretrial release, but there's no accountability. Even the few that we've had, we go back to the court and say, you know, so-and-so's screwing up, they're continuing to do drugs, or they're continuing to get rearrested. It's still a non-bailable offense, so the judge can't still put them in jail. So it makes us look bad. We're being viewed like we're not doing what we're supposed to. Not saying we, probation in general. But it's no fault of the department. It's just kind of a flaw in this bail reform. I think some things are being worked on statewide, but luckily for us right now, at least, it seems Judge King doesn't seem to be a huge fan of putting everybody on non-monetary probationary release conditions right now. In the local courts, we don't seem to have a lot of business from the local courts right now either. So we do a lot of trainings. We're very fortunate that we partner good with Jefferson County. So we do pepper spray training with Jefferson County, defensive tactics with Jefferson County. We do some handcuff training with Jefferson County. We do a really good scenario training with Jefferson County that I'll talk about here in a second. Every summer, there's a Probation Officers Association summer conference that we typically send one officer to. This year it's in Syracuse, so we might be able to get a couple people more down there for a day. And we do a lot of online trainings always. So I included some pictures. So we go to JCC with Jefferson County. So on the right is Kylie getting pepper sprayed. You can't quite see the stream, but I got the picture of the stream going right to her eyes. This is Marcus right after he was pepper sprayed. So they have a decontamination station with a hose. It's bad, right?
Do you put that in the job description?
No, so fortunately here, Mary Jo was the director when we started carrying pepper spray. We don't have to be sprayed to carry it, we just have to go through the training.
Yeah.
Jefferson County, they mandate you have to go through it.
Wow.
So I've been through it, Mark has been through it, Kylie's been through it. It's not fun. This is the scenario training. That's Lisa on the right, Sarah on the left. They're doing a simulated vehicle search. So Jefferson County, we get access to the JCC dorms. So it's like a little apartment. And they put on a few scenarios, we put on some scenarios. We did a domestic violence one last year that I thought it was really good. We went down to, I bought fake blood and Sarah had fake blood on her. It's just really good, and it's really good that we're using different departments. Jefferson County isn't very familiar with us, so it feels a lot more real for them when they come in to that dorm room and they see me or Sarah, who they don't know all that well. We spend a lot of time drug testing people. That was not in the job description either, Joan. I might have thought differently if I knew we had to spend that much time in the bathroom with people, but this is a thing that we confiscated. This is a detox. I guess it's a pill, isn't it? Yeah, it's a capsule. But somebody paid $35 to buy a pill that they could then take to try to clean their urine. This one also, I said, note the price, $29.99. Somebody paid for synthetic urine to try to meet our drug test. So that's why we're in the bathroom. We're in there making sure it's urine coming out of their body into our cups. Not the highlight of any of our days, but we do it.
And let me just say that there's no soundproofing between my office and our bathroom.
Yes, Joan actually heard some noise in there yesterday at 4:30.
Have to yell at them to get them to go on.
Yesterday was a little.
I wish it was just that.
I put in here, sometimes simple home visits turn into so much more. This is a perfect example. I should have brought the can over. That looks, feels, sounds like a Pringles can. I have no idea what possessed me to pick it up, but I picked it up and the bottom screws off and there were drugs found inside the bottom.
Isn't that amazing?
This WD-40 can looks just like one in my garage. And again, I have no idea what possessed me to pick it up, because I found it in a garage. But, you can see it a lot better in my
Maybe
picture.
because it was next to the Crown Royal bin.
That's actually up at the sheriff's department, because there was crystal meth in the found in the bottom of that one. They didn't let me keep that one, the sheriff's office kept it. So these next group of pictures, these are all things that we found actually during COVID. So I think maybe some thoughts in the community were that we weren't still out there doing stuff, but we found all this stuff during COVID. So why bother to look in the dishwasher during a home visit? Because we popped that open, there was a meth lab inside the dishwasher. I don't think many clean dishes ever went inside that dishwasher either, if you look at it close. Should we look inside the backpack? Marcus opened that backpack up, and there's a meth lab inside that backpack. Sometimes things aren't so hidden. If you can tell all those beer cans, that guy had a hard time hiding his alcohol problem when we made a home visit. Interestingly enough, those 2 white cups, I don't think that's beer in those cups. I think he didn't move far from that couch. If you get what I'm saying.
Is that just a Sunday morning?
I think it was. And then we also find a lot of firearms sometimes from felons who shouldn't be in possession of firearms. This one's going to be a little blurry, but that's a shotgun. The barrel was shaved down and shortened. Obviously, the stock has been altered. That's electrical tape kind of holding the stock to the barrel. But they fashioned it into a pistol grip. Yes, and Sergeant Knight from the sheriff's office had once, in order to charge people with it, they have to test fire it. I would have loved to be there that day, but they fired it and it actually does fire.
Can you actually hang on to it, or does it end up in Jefferson County?
I don't know what. Well, Sergeant Knight's still alive, so. All right, I probably went over my. I was going to do it in 30 seconds. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, so let's talk about the drug task force. It seems like the probation department does the majority of the work for the drug task force. Would we be further ahead just to put out another probation officer and do away with the task force, or how do the two intertwine or function together?
I wouldn't say that we do a majority of the work. They do a lot of work on their own. We do our thing. We do intermingle sometimes. But some of their arrests are related to things that we're involved in for sure. Some of those pictures, we ask them to go with us, so it goes as their arrest. But when we find the meth lab and stuff, they make the arrest. They get all the credit for it. We don't make arrests.
But it seems like all these drug arrests are initiated by a probation home visit.
Not all, certainly not all. They do their investigations. There are some that are initiated by us and some with parole, but they definitely do their own thing and we're not involved in it all.
Probation has the authority. If someone's on probation, we have the authority to search premises without a warrant by nature of being, someone's on community supervision. That opens the door for suspicions that,
So we should actually turn an WD can over and see the bottom of it.
So that we can go to those houses and search. Law enforcement needs the search warrant. But we can go, and we're probably gonna go do some this afternoon even, but we can go, we can search vehicles of the offender, that's on probation, we can search their residence, we can go to their homes. We have a lot more authority over people who are convicted and sentenced to community supervision.
Can law enforcement then accompany you?
So our condition, our search condition is written that they will submit their person, property, how does it go? Their automobile or any other object to search and seizure by your probation officer or agent at any time with or without a search warrant. So as long as we're asking law enforcement to accompany us, they are acting as our agent. But it doesn't work the opposite.
Right.
You know, the task force can't call us and say, hey, I'm looking at Ryan, can you guys go over there? It doesn't work that way, but I could call them and say, hey, we're gonna do a home visit to Ryan's. Do you wanna tag along? Ryan's not on probation, by the way.
Well, we should go search his house this afternoon.
He maybe should be.
I think you will be fine here in Berkeley.
Hopefully no cops as well.
No cups on the loom.
I did a little math with the number of cases, I think that you had up, it came to 185, and you've got 5 probation officers. So you're handling about 37 cases each in that neighborhood at some time or another.
Right.
How is that?
Roughly.
We heard earlier with the Child Protective Services that you get near 40, it was too many, so are you able to handle those sufficiently with that workload?
Yeah, I've been doing a little bit of research statewide. There are some other departments that have similar caseloads that probably have more officers than we do. There are larger departments with a lot more officers but have higher caseload numbers as well. But I don't think we struggle to keep up with our caseload. We're one of the few, I still have a caseload, so we're one of the few departments in the state that the director would still have a caseload.
Isn't there a difference between the cases of how much, so like your DWI conditional discharges, or I don't know, but whatever they are, don't take nearly as much as some of your like sex offense or juvenile delinquents and things like that?
Yeah, the DWI conditional discharges aren't an actual sentence to community supervision, so I just have to do
Right,
some quarterly checks.
so
on
the
them.
numbers increases your case number, but the amount of work might not be as much as something
It's not
else.
uniform across.
Right, not like with CPS and things like that.
We've also moved the responsibilities for the Stop DWI program under probation as well. So that was previously handled by Mountain View, and then I think in 2019, we moved it. 2019, we moved it under probation. So they're handling those responsibilities, which I don't think, I think the annual budget for that is 40,000.
40-ish.
So, but that's additional responsibilities that we've added to probation.
Oh, and I was gonna bring a
Yeah.
Stop DWI pizza cutter for all of you.
I was just gonna say.
I've got some in the office, I'll run them right back over.
New York
They're
Pizzeria passes them out, I think. don't they?
So during the Super Bowl, we have to do community engagement along with they used to be called crackdowns, now they're called high visibility engagement campaigns. So during the Super Bowl, I went to all the pizza places that I could go to, said, hey, we slap a sticker on a box and hand out a pizza cutter to everybody that orders a pizza. So and we had it was well received from them.
They're great pizza cutters.
Yeah, they work fine. Yeah.
They cut more than pizza, we use them for pancakes, whatever.
Yeah.
Your kids or your grandkids would love them. Dishwasher safe.
Keep your finger off.
Any other questions from the committee? All right, well, Matt, thank you very much, and thank you to your colleagues. I've only ever heard good things about the work your department's doing, so keep up the great work, and just appreciate everything that you're doing.
Thank you.
And Marcus is really good on the kickball team, by the way.
Yeah, we thank God. The courthouse team would be lost during Community Cup without the probation department.
I'm gonna go grab those pizza cutters and we'll come get that.
Please do. All right. Well, while he's getting the pizza cutters, we'll move on to our dockets.
First docket is amending compensation plan with reference to the Building and Grounds Department to create one full-time cleaner for the Glenfield Elementary School location at grade 4 effective immediately.
Any discussion on that?
Is that a full-time? Is that
Yeah.
a full-time job down there? Or are you gonna be able to use this in other places?
So the theory is once we'll take one of our cleaners or custodians from DSS now, move them to Glenfield. Glenfield school is probably double the size of DSS, so we'll need an addition with triple the bathrooms that we have there, amount of floor space and everything else. So we'll use another full-time cleaner at that point in time. After DSS moves back, that'll be roughly the same time that highway, will have a new highway garage, and outdoor services will be up and running, hopefully. So they will have, we're gonna take over cleaning of the bathrooms and offices, basically, of those two buildings, so that will create more space for a full-time person.
Okay, thank you.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Awarding bid and authorizing agreement between the County of Lewis and Specialty Welding and Fabrication for snow removal and lawn care at the Glenfield School property in the amount of $35,850.
Any discussion?
Yeah, was there a review done on this one, like there, most of them? There's quite a disparity in some of the bids there. So, has this guy been vetted and certified, he understands everything he's got to do? And all
He
that?
understands everything, and he used to plow craft for a period number of years, I guess, so he's certainly been around.
Okay,
He does several commercial.
okay, but I wasn't familiar and I just thought I'd ask the question. Thank you.
Thanks, Dick. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Authorizing intermunicipal agreement between the County of Lewis and the Town of Denmark to administer land use and zoning regulations.
Any discussion?
I just note that we already do codes for the Town of Denmark. They're asking us now to take on land use and zoning, which is far less demanding as codes, so and it fits naturally. Right?
What towns are left right now that we're not in?
Leiden, Lansdale, that's it.
Okay.
Don't.
Yeah, most of them are on board, certainly for the zoning and land use.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Amending compensation plan with reference to the district attorney's office to create a temporary part-time assistant district attorney from January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2022, with compensation not to exceed $10,000.
Any discussion? Ryan, we're not creating this, are we? This is just the position we've had all along.
Yes, so technically, it is we are creating this position, but it's Cindy Inshert, who's been with us now for 3 years. Her hours are extremely limited at this point. What she does for us is she does all the forfeiture filings. So when we collect assets through forfeiture, there's a lot of paperwork and audits that are done with that. Cindy coordinates all the stuff for forfeitures. So that's her role. But it was not requested in the budget, but she kept kind of working, and so here we are.
It's a source of revenue too for law enforcement and county, the
The
criminal asset forfeiture.
forfeitures, yep, I forget how much we put in the budget for forfeiture, it's not much, maybe 20 grand, but we get more through vehicles and equipment and stuff like that. So we can sometimes auction those off.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Transferring funds in the coroner department / district attorney accounts in the amount of $40,000 to provide additional funding from contingency for transportation and professional services costs.
Any discussion?
I can comment on that. We're going to, in the next couple of years, be faced with some real challenges for coroner services. There's a nationwide shortage of forensic pathologists, which are the certification that's required to perform autopsies and then testify in court, on the findings. We've got one gentleman that's been doing it for many, many years for Jefferson, St. Lawrence, and Lewis counties. He's getting quite elderly. He was out actually with illness for the first half of, last half of last year and most of the first half of this year so far. We've been sending our autopsies out to Schenectady, Binghamton, Rochester, Buffalo, wherever we can, wherever people will take us. And the transportation costs is really what's the most expensive to move those bodies around. So,
And part of the increase was because of the accidents that we had this last winter.
yes,
too.
and 7 snowmobile accidents.
All required.
We typically only have, I think, 30, total unattended deaths a year. To have 7 in the first 3 months is a lot.
Yes. Any other discussion on that? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Amending the compensation plan with reference to the highway department to create one full-time senior account clerk position, grade 19, due to long-term leave of absence and impending retirement.
Any discussion?
I can comment on that as well. Charlie Burris, who's been our fiscal manager there for many, many years, she's announced that she will be retiring from the county soon, but in the next year or so. At the same time, we have an employee that has worked down there that is going to be on a prolonged leave of absence due to some health issues. And so we want somebody that can, 1, fill in for the prolonged leave of absence, and 2, hopefully learn from Charlie before she retires some of the things to take over. So that's it.
So hopefully no increase in employment overall. We can just maintain the same
Correct.
level of employment.
Correct. Yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Appropriating funds in the county road accounts in the amount of $55,500 from contingency for engineering services to apply for FEMA assistance on Osceola Road and Stetzer Road repairs.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Authorizing supplemental agreement number 2 to the contract between the New York State Department of Transportation and Lewis County for the Transportation Federal Aid Bridge Replacement Project known as County Road 43 over Moose Creek.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Let's move on to the resolution, motions, excuse me.
The first motion is to authorize Buildings and Grounds Supervisor Matt O'Connor to send out an RFP for 911 tower driveway snow plowing services.
Can I get someone to make that motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion. And what is that exactly?
Right now, it's currently under one contractor who takes care of all top 8 towers from Harrisville to Osceola.
Tower stuff.
Yeah. They plow the driveways and then shovel a path to the generator and to the shelter.
So are you looking to leave that intact as one bid, or are you looking to divide them up?
I think this may be the first year we divide them up, quite honestly.
I thought we started out dividing them up, and that didn't work, so we consolidated them.
Yeah.
I had a brief conversation with Cheryl about it earlier today, and she was fine with splitting them this year. It's difficult for one contractor to stretch from one end of the county to the other in a timely manner. Just like today with our snowfall, there's over a foot of snow up on, Montague, Gomer Hill, Osceola, places like that, and we have our generator service on today, and E.F. Johnson is servicing towers today. So we have 2 different members trying to make it to towers that are not accessible or easily accessible with over a foot of heavy wet snow. So we need that done in a kind of a timely manner to get done, and it's difficult for one person to make all those towers.
Well, it wouldn't hurt to split them up anyway, if they can get it done that way, because then if somebody has a breakdown, somebody can fill in for them, they can do a shared services thing.
So I just made some notes on our previous contract today to be able to take it basically south and north of Lowell.
It's if you can get it done that way.
Yeah.
many teller sites are there?
Nine.
We'd be plowing eight total, because we don't worry about the, ESP tower or number 3 road tower.
Josh, did you second that motion? Okay, all right, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Motion to authorize Buildings and Grounds Supervisor Matt O'Connor to send out an RFP for JCC snow plowing services.
Can I get someone to make that motion? Josh, second? You want a second?
I'll second it.
Thanks, Dave.
I'm just,
Any discussion?
Didn't we just do this last year?
We did, we're gonna change out the spec a little bit this year, so that's why we'll change it out, and we'll make it, hopefully make it a multi-year contract.
I thought we just did it, so it's for next year.
We did just do it.
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
That's all I have.
Okay, is there any other business to bring forward to the committee?
Yeah, we talked about getting some snowplow prices and bidding to see if we were doing economically in-house better than we could out. And we didn't do that, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct, that would, I believe, Tim Hunt was looking into that.
Yeah.
And I didn't have much involvement on that, because he takes care of most of our parking lot.
We got, that was, Dick, if you recall, we got quite a bit of pushback from our employees, obviously, who would be losing those hours of overtime. And we're in the middle of union negotiations and, coming out of COVID, and we've done quite enough at that point to rock the boat. We decided to take it easy.
So actually, if you take a look at it, we owe it to the taxpayer to get the best, most reasonable price job we can get.
So JCC and then now Glenfield, those are the only ones that we contract out, or what else is there?
The hospital, this building, DSS, PSP.
Well, no, that we contract out.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
everything else in-house.
Okay,
Well, the towers.
right, okay.
The hospital actually pays us, right, somehow?
They do, yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, if there's nothing else, can I get a motion to adjourn? Made by Dick, made by Josh, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Motion carries, meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
2 committee meeting.
You're okay back there?
Jeff made a motion, second by Josh. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. The first thing we have is we have a presentation. Patrick Courier is here for our DMV Board of Elections project overview. Patrick.
Thank you. Okay, so the last month and a half or so, we've been working with key people at the Department of Motor Vehicles and Board of Elections. We've done some field work to gather information. We took our measurements of the existing building and got everything drawn up to scale and put it into our Revit program, which is our AutoCAD model. And so we verified all the existing conditions. We're working off of right now the survey map that I think was done by Kovacs, yes, thank you, Kovacs. And there's no topographic that's done yet or utility mapping, but we've got a boundary in an aerial view that we've overlaid. So basically we...
Which one do you want to see, site 2 or site 3?
Number 2, site 2, there we go, yeah. Okay, perfect. Yep. There we go.
Zoom out.
So, yeah, option 2. Okay, so option 2, we were looking at about a 3,000 square foot addition off the north side of the building. And we've got coming in the entrance door there, whoops.
Maybe not, okay.
You know, he's good at a number of things.
Not technology. Joe's got that. So everybody will learn that about me. So coming in the north side of the building there is a new entrance. The middle one? Yep. Okay, right there. So the existing entrance door is off the north side here. This is the corner. And this is the existing building right there. We're trying to maintain the existing bathrooms, the break area, and put on an addition that would serve as an entrance, one main entrance for both Department of Motor Vehicles and Board of Elections, and then have shared space in here, and also have additional space for Board of Elections back here for storage of machines and for their training room. Just in kind of a quick overall of it. So we did one option. We had to, just evaluate all the different options of what to do with it. We started with an option similar to this one. We developed this. We moved on to a third option. If you could hit the next sheet there, which was actually the fourth option, because we had one option where we looked at just a brand new standalone building, but that really didn't make much sense from a feasibility standpoint of utilizing the building that's there, and cost-wise, it didn't make sense. So with this option, we're looking at adding on to the west side of the building here and still have parking all the way along the front and then down the side. All of our handicap parking would be there. We'd still have one main entry. Thank you. So you'd enter in here and drive through, and you could exit out down here. So we'd be relocating this entrance over on the street there. Going over to the floor plan, similar kind of approaches we have from the north side of the building, one point of entry. This would be a glass vestibule here, lobby area with a couple public toilet rooms out there, water fountain. And then this would be more or less a glass wall, hollow metal framing with lots of glass, just so that you can see where the Department of Motor Vehicles is. And then you'd come into there and come around to the clerks along the side here and waiting area. And then there's a room for their plate storage, their office. And then we get over into coming in this door here to Board of Elections. They have a reception area, small little waiting area. And then the commissioners would be back here, and then their training room, their storage for the voting machines, and the break room in the common toilet rooms for both departments. So where we ended up with that at our last meeting, we've had a couple of legislators here at both meetings that we had, the formal meetings. And we worked with Ann, Lindsay, and Jake to develop these. At the last meeting, we made notes to kind of combine, pretty much go with option 3, but combine all the notes that we talked about and everything we liked from option 2, and then add an area where we could have early voting done. Because the early voting could be very well done within the same area as the training room. Could be utilized also for early voting, or we could actually do it out here somewhere off the lot.
So early voting currently doesn't have a home because the first 2 years we were over at the village and town office on Bostwick Street. The state has said that that is insufficient space for folks with handicaps and disabilities. So now we have to find a new home for early voting. We're thinking maybe the lobby of this building or potentially JCC, but it would be thoughtful, we kind of were thinking ahead that this is gonna be something that's not going away anytime soon in New York State. It would be great to have a room that could, multi-purpose room that could be converted to early voting, when we need that twice a year for primaries and general elections. So something right on site would make sense. Plus our staff has to man it anyway, so we've got something.
So just out of curiosity, what's the efficiency for handicap access at
the space between, Ann and Lindsay might correct me on here, but I believe it was the space between the voting machines was insufficient for privacy and insufficient for handicapped people to navigate.
I went down there and voted there. They had 3 machines in very room, maybe the size of this.
Oh, so they weren't using that main
No,
conference room?
no.
They wouldn't,
Yeah, because that was being used.
yeah, the courtroom is still needed for courts.
Okay.
So it was very tight and there really was no privacy and I could never see a wheelchair there.
Yep, question, I know there's plenty of regulations on the voting machine storage, but that's excess space to the north of the storage?
So they've got to be able to, when they store those, they can, kind of pull them tight together. There was at one point a regulation of so many square feet per machine, and you had to keep clearance around them. Now they've just got to have space where they can pull them out, work on them, and have space to get all the way around it. Plus, they've got a lot of stuff as far as their setup going to each district and setting things up. There's the iPads, the bags, the signage, and all of that equipment that goes along there too. So we really try to, that's quite a bit smaller than what they've got now over on at the Commons. But it's doable as far as what they need. We've crunched their square footage down as much as we could, but yet maintained what they need to function. So, and if we go back a slide here, there we go. Yeah, that one doesn't appear to be quite as much, but keep in mind, these were conceptual at this point so that we could develop a budget. So what we were able to derive from these 4 different scenarios that we put together is that the existing building's 2,200 square feet. And with early voting, if we incorporate that in, we need 3,400 square feet. So with that, I utilized those numbers to develop a budget of what we anticipate the cost to be. Now, I'm hoping that the cost comes in much lower with competitive bidding, but depending on, we could go on and on. Everybody's heard that story over and over. Depending on when it bids and who's available and who's bidding on it, we can see a drastic change. And sometimes you'll get a really good contractor that comes in much less, and we'll make sure they do the equivalent job to the others. So we'll hope the project this size is a nice project to open up the boundaries for some other type of contractors that are around. Naturally, they'll still need to be bonded in, of sufficient size to be able to take on this type of project.
So which one is the option that you're leaning to?
Option 3, if you could go to the next slide again there. They're very similar. This one's in a little more detail, option 2, with the seating and stuff. So we had a lot of notes and comments at our last meeting written on option 2, but we did decide as unanimously between Ann, Lindsay, Jake, Larry was at the last meeting, Ryan, and Phil, and Matt O'Connor. We all pretty much concurred that we like this layout. It's about the same size as the other one. It's just setting it back and off to the west more so than out into the parking lot. And I think we can get a nice curb line along there, and we can utilize the entrance over here, which is the existing. We can actually construct this while they maintain operation of the existing DMV, and then come through here and do the rest of the work over there. And once complete, they can use this to move their machines in and out. So we'll have that as a loading area. We did talk about also incorporating in a platform lift that would be outside, a scissors type platform lift made for the exterior, where they could roll the machines out the door and take them up to back there, right there on that back door. So we can look at that more, make some decisions as we get further along on it. But right now, they're getting by without one, but it would be nice.
Trucks that have this, so this would give us some flexibility to use the trucks.
So this will, would mean moving the electrical box and all the utilities are currently in there?
The electrical box is in the front corner of the building.
Yeah.
So we're okay there to leave that there. And I'm not sure exactly, I think our water, sewer are over on this side, so we'll maintain those. So we tried to maintain as much as we could. But, in essence, to make the building flow and function and aesthetically to look like one building, we are going to end up, more than likely, removing all the roofing, siding, stripping it out. Now, everybody agreed that, for the voting machine storage area, we could just, scrape up the flooring that's there, grind it off, and just put a sealer on it, and keep it as simple as possible, but make it sure it's functional. And with this scheme here, we've incorporated, with both schemes, they had a 3,000 square foot addition. Based on adding early voting and a few other things, we figured that we need at least another 400 square feet. So when I put together the budget, I based it on 2,200 square feet of existing building with 3,400 square feet of an addition, even though these just show a 3,000 square foot addition.
So why don't we talk about budget?
Yep. Okay. So the budget on the project, we're looking at demolition at just under $3 a square foot. Demolition meaning, removing siding, roofing, may possibly end up, it's within the budget to replace the windows unless we decide not to. But we, with changing the layout of the building and such, we haven't looked that closely at it during the concept phase. But as we get into preliminary design, I have a feeling we're probably going to want to redo the windows, make them all the same vintage, all match, and so forth. So we've got about $6,000 into demolition for site work. The site, we're just over an acre of disturbance. We tried to squeeze it down. I talked to Matt O'Connor several times, not to point it at him, but just that he'd know. We could squeeze the site down smaller and avoid, stormwater pollution prevention plans and inspections and coordination with DEC and all that. But it's just doesn't make sense to do it unless you really, want to, and that's something we can discuss, as we get into preliminary design. But I think that's gonna limit you more as far as what you really wanna do with the parking lot and so forth. The day we had our meeting over there, I counted the vehicles, there were 24 vehicles in the parking lot over there.
That's without.
And there's a lot of people, every time I've been over there, I've been at least 4 or 5 times, there are a lot of people in and out of there. So we're going to try to make things flow more efficiently and such. So we've got $350,000 for site work. We are seeing that site work is, you have less contractors bidding on it, and the cost of site work is quite a bit. We've got to put in some stormwater drainage. We've got to, like I said, do the SWIP plan, probably even with water flowing off asphalt, it's got to be filtered across the lawn and then taken to daylight. There is a good location out back where we can probably get a permission from DEC to daylight the drainage. But we're adding quite a bit of roof area in the parking lot. Right now it's primarily gravel. There's a concrete slab out in front that we'll remove and put in a straight sidewalk across here with curb and then our parking. So it'll be a good sized parking lot. And then the addition is 3,400 square feet, as I mentioned, at $235 a square foot, about $800,000. The entry canopies, we've got a couple of those, $7,000. Existing interior, exterior building renovations, siding, roofing, windows, interior at 2,200 square feet at $115. Puts us at $250. So it's basically 1.4 million without contingents or without the general conditions and the overhead and profit. Those are the variables that, depending on how hungry somebody is, they're going to come in at different levels on that. So that adds up to a 1.7 on the high end. And the only exclusions would be separate from, our design fees and rock excavation, which I don't think will proceed. The county stuff some work over there. You haven't encountered any rock, I don't think, no. And geotechnical testing and engineering, which we don't foresee as needing. Schedule-wise, if we were to get started here in May with the preliminary design and construction documents, we'd be ready to go to bid August 22nd. And 3.5 weeks for bidding, and then award it, we'd be ready to start construction October 3rd. So if we stay on task with that, they can actually get their foundations in the ground, get the shell of the addition put up, roof trusses on there, and enclosed, and work on it through the winter, which will make it more entertaining for contractors.
Does the plan include asphalting the driveway lane?
Yes, the budget does, yeah. The exact limits of how far we go on that, we need to determine.
Well,
And,
doesn't the town or the village require certain spots per?
Yes, yeah, yep. The village will have within their zoning certain number of spots per square footage of business space. So we've accounted for the maximum amount, but we may be able to cut that back somewhat. The hard thing is with coming off of I got the streets mixed up. That's
River Estate.
No, East State here, yeah, East State, and coming around and coming back out on the river. That encompasses quite a bit of area right there in itself. But I don't.
Jake, do you get a lot of trucks that come through that?
We get trucks, trailers, snowmobile trailers, ATV trailers, containers.
So you're envisioning that as a turnaround for trucks? They come in one way?
They come in either one,
Yeah.
and drive through and they can drive out. And we can, as we get into preliminary design, maybe even set up certain areas for the larger trucks, tractor trailers, a couple spots for that, to account for it.
Patrick, a couple of comments and maybe think about the village town permitting and planning board process.
Yep.
We started next month, they might be approved by October.
We're going to start, like, yeah, that's always hard because every planning board I've ever dealt with, they want everything complete before you submit, and it's hard, we just can't get to the end until we start at the beginning. I have discussed with Matt because he even called one of the village people while we were on site. I do want to get that process going as quickly as possible, just to, say, hey, I'll touch base with you every few weeks, send them draft drawings. They can't do them, they can't accept them, but I'll send them. If they look at them, they look at them. If they don't, they don't. But I'm going to be very proactive on this, is to send them everything as we're going along, so that when it gets to that point of, the actual submission, hopefully we can get a quicker turnaround on it.
Given prior experience, do we just want to declare ourselves municipally exempt from the beginning?
Well, us declaring that doesn't mean that that's automatic. They still have to review those factors to decide whether or not they agree, but.
Yeah, I think I'm going to try to rein them in a little sooner here and really, build up that connection. I will, and because it is important, because I think we can make it work as best possible. We'll use that as a last resort, but it's good to have it, as a card in the back pocket in case needed be. But we do want their input so that, we don't have to change anything after the fact, and that might come up.
Can we, so what we're asking the committee today is to just, one, be briefed on kind of discussions we've had to this point, understand that this is only the concept. I know Jake and Ann and Lindsay have a lot to say about the specific design once we get in the building. We're kind of just, like Patrick said, getting an idea of scope and budget, which is, what we've done. At this point, we would like to move to the design phase, which would, allow Jake and Patrick and Ann and Lindsay to get together and really refine the floor plan and get it to, to where they want it to be. CNS has proposed a fee of $148,000 for design, bid documents, bid administration, and then obviously, following us through, the construction as they normally would. We do have KT, our project managers, that are going to be overseeing this project with us as well. So we've got them on board. But that's kind of what we're asking the committee to consider today. Do we have enough? Do we feel comfortable enough with the scope and the budget? The scope being, a 3,400 square foot addition, the budget being about $1.4 million. Is that within our comfort zone to start moving along towards design, basically?
Have Ian and Lindsay seen this?
Yeah, these are the ones from our last meeting. We haven't done any more on this since our last.
And you thought relatively comfortable
Yes.
with this? And the only thing flag I see is maybe there needs to be a wall or a door that goes across from the commissioner's office to the mechanical, so that there is some sort of separation between DMV and
Yes,
DOE.
correct. And I think that was one of the notes we mentioned there. Yeah. So, no, I think everybody was very comfortable with the fact of combining the two departments into one building with a single entry. And then at one point we had talked about having security in the lobby area, and both DMV and DOE agreed that it was better to have the security just in DMV. They're more accessible to the people that are in there. Board of Elections wasn't concerned about it. We may actually end up, in case of Board of Elections, everybody's out back with their voting machines or such, there may be a buzzer on their door. It may be something like that. So we will look at, a security type system where, if they want it, when we get into that far into it, where you have to actually be buzzed in case they get up and they're not right there at the desk. But the reception is set up on board of elections where there'd be two people, deputy commissioners, working here. So if one person's at lunch or restroom or just runs out or something, there pretty much will always be somebody here. But there are times where all four of them might be back in here and they can just lock the door and put it, we'll have a little bell there.
With a buzzer like that now.
Yep.
Is the break room intended for all the employees from
Yes.
both departments?
Yes, so we're going to share the break room. The existing bathrooms will be shared for both departments. That way we're only building out 2 new bathrooms over here and another mechanical room. We'll probably have the mechanical systems, more than likely, we'll maintain those separately on this side in the existing building from the new, because it's just going to be a lot easier, I think.
It looks like a good flow.
I like it, I
I think the building's gonna look really nice. I know that we've still gotta develop it a lot more because there's a lot of little specific things about, storage, but we can work that in along, the last scheme shows some, tall storage cabinets that we do a lot along the corridors. We'll go like an extra 1.5 foot wider on the corridor and put tall storage all along there. That way it's more usable, you end up with
Lindsay
more
and Andy
space.
definitely wanted shelving along the wall in that voting machine storage room for their iPads and bags and signage and everything else.
We'll have our interior designer work along with the departments to pick out furniture and everything. We'll need some assistance from your purchasing department to actually purchase the furnishings. And I'd suggest we probably just do that under state contract if you're fine with that. It's the quickest, easiest way to do it, get it going.
At this point, Jake, is it up here workable for you, or are you?
We have to work on designing the design of the interior, where he wants. I mean, square footage wise, we can make it work. I mean, here's, like I said, I haven't really done numbers. I mean, it's gonna be adjustment for us because we're going from a 2,000 square foot building to 900 square feet. But of that, we're gonna be having shared bathrooms and like that. So, I mean, if we can move some walls around, move some proposed rooms around, then,
But Jake, in relation to the actual counter space that you have for the interaction with the public, that space in this drawing is bigger, right?
I honestly, I don't know, Larry. I didn't really scale this out, I mean, I'm guessing the way it looks like it's pretty well the same as, at least the same as what they have right now. So, which that's workable for us right now. I mean, if we can squeeze a little more room out for the staff, like Patrick said, that we can, we're by no means a set final design yet, so.
Yeah, because, the way this is set up, if you have a problem with space, we can just push that, let's see, that's, well, looking at it, it would be the west wall, if you push that space out.
Which we're going to be breaking that by
Or if you.
So this
Patrick
doesn't,
already talked about it.
This is based on 3,000
yeah, so
square
we're
feet
gonna add
here.
400
Yeah.
square feet to this.
Yes, to this. Yeah, and if we really get into it and find out that it's going to be 450 or so, we'll let the legislators know. But I think that adding the 400 and meshing the plans together with the comments from option 2 and the layout coming off the west side in option 3, that we can really fine tune and give everybody what they need.
I like the design, I think it's functional.
It'll work well too, yes, because trying to keep the width, as we were talking about, of the addition similar to the width of the existing building. We might need to flatten the roof down a little bit lower so that it doesn't override the peak, but we'll work through all those details and all. But we can get that to tie in. Sitting on the corner, Visually, we'll put together some 3D renderings of it in Photoshop in the existing site work around the building. And I think that it'll look really well. A lot of planning boards I've dealt with in the past love the idea that from the corner, you're looking at the building and not the parking area, even though everybody will know where the parking area is from both streets. From the corner intersection, and we could even incorporate something in really nicely for signage right out on the corner, so that the signage for both departments is, blended into one sign, but very distinctly separate entities.
Maybe we get a better deal on the sign if we get two signs.
Yes.
That'll bring us from 1.4 billion to 1.3.
What do we need from the committee? Just a motion to go ahead with the engineering?
Yep, so motion to move on to, basically to enter an agreement with CNS to execute the design phase. We will then take that motion and have it as a resolution for the board on May 3rd.
Can I get a motion on that? Josh, second?
You better be comfortable with all this.
I do have a question, actually. What is causing us to do this? Why are we changing where the Board of Elections sits?
Good
Because
question.
I wasn't part of that
Yep.
discussion.
They, so if you want someday, we'll go down and take a look at where they're at. So first of all, they're renting space, which isn't always a great deal for a government that plans to be around for another 50 years to be renting. Second of all, the space that they have is, so their machine storage, for example, is classified as prime downtown real estate. So we're paying a pretty high rental cost. In fact, it's basically a storefrontage that we've papered over to store machines in, which is not really a great deal for the taxpayers either. Additionally, the Board of Elections, the State Board of Elections has dinged us on our audit every year for the last 5 years or so, because the space is not adequate for, like Patrick said, each machine needs to be able to be pulled out, and we have to have a space wide enough for a wheelchair to go around to inspect it. We don't quite have enough space there. And just overall, it's not an ideal location. The walls aren't painted, the space is cut up, and they're kind of on their own. So combining them with Board of Elections to make a motor voter center where if you have to change your address or you just move to town or whatever the case may be, kind of one-stop shop for those types of transactions. So that's the thought process.
And you decided that with all the work that's going on up on the hill, it wouldn't pay to put it up there, basically.
That was our first design, was to put Board of Elections up on the hill on Stowe Street, incorporate it into the Human Services Building. The elevations up there drop off quite a bit. So to put an addition on the backside for the size that Board of Elections needs would have been quite costly to do that. Additionally, the parking up there, the only place we could have done an addition would have been on the flat parking, and we're already kind of crunched for parking. What we had ended up with was a design where Board of Elections offices would be in Stowe Street, but the machine storage would be in a separate garage, more or less, that's on that campus. And it seemed infeasible for the long run to ask a small staff to be constantly running across the parking lot. And by the time you brought sewer and water across the parking lot, so you had a toilet over there, the cost just kept building. We knew we were gonna buy this building anyway for DMV, and so we thought it would make sense to come up to that. I mean, is that more or less?
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you.
Okay, we're all set. I'll make a motion, second, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Motion carried. Any other questions, comments, or anything? Tom, I got one if I could. Patrick, did they talk about, occasionally you get a contentious election, machines get impounded. They talk about areas so that they can function that. What happens is that the machines have to come back, go into an area that can be completely secure, the keys go to the sheriff. So just as you're getting into your design, just, if they haven't changed.
I don't recall if we talked specifically about that, but it makes sense, I understand what you're saying, so we'll.
Ask them and they'll tell you.
Yep, yeah.
Maybe we can have a locking function on that storage room that would, secure that.
I wonder if it's that little training room work area, if that's, they pull it right in there.
But 30 machines have to go in there.
All of them would?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you meant just like if there was a specific voting machine at a specific district where there was a question as far as that machine.
When they do an impoundment, it's all 30 machines.
That happened to Oneida County just last year.
They took all their machines?
I believe it was a countywide, yeah.
It's a countywide election, so the machines are.
Well,
So the whole district.
so if they're going to impound all the machines and lock them up, we'll just lock them up right where they are.
Yeah.
And so what, I think that if they're going, say, hey, these machines have to be locked down, we could just say, hey, they'll be in that room, and that room will be locked off.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, we'll have to figure a way. Now, when they impound them, do you know, does the commissioners have access to? They can't have access to that.
I think
So-
maybe we'd want it, maybe there's a way to have a separate lock.
That's what-
Where we keep a key
Double
kind of
lock.
separate, a
Yeah.
double lock that never gets used unless, something.
That's, yep. Or they just have to take it back to their place.
I've been to a couple of meetings with Dick, and they've never brought that up as an issue, so.
I only did it for 40 years, Larry.
Mhm.
I had it 3 or 4 times through there. I don't know, maybe they just didn't, maybe things have changed, and you don't have to anymore, but.
I think you're right, Dave, because Oneida County just had to do it, because they're congressional, remember they were within such a razor thin between Tenney and, Claudia Tenney and,
Right.
the other guy that's gonna be Jeff Brindisi.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll keep that.
It's just a-
Yep, no, that sounds good.
Anything else? All right, thank you very much.
Okay, great. One more item on a separate subject, if I could. The highway garage, as long as I have the committee here, its attention, is we're in the process of the contractors are submitting samples on everything. The carpeting, the interior blinds, the exterior materials. We got together, Jenny was there, I know Ryan was, Matt O'Connor over at DSS.
Dick was
Dick was there, yep. And we looked at the samples for the DSS building, and we came up to a conclusion there of the Lucabon panels are around the mansard that's around the top of the building. We're completely redoing that. I don't have the brick samples with me, but it's a buff colored brick, similar to what's there, but the brick on the corners that we're maintaining is a blended brick, so it has lighter and darker bricks. We went to a medium with just one color, that way it's an accent from the corners become an accent. So we picked out the brick color. We've got dark bronze windows from EFCO, which is a big aluminum window door manufacturer. And the, this one here is the Lucabon panels that wraps around the top, and we have the signage that'll be going on that. So we feel that's gonna look really sharp. Everybody was agreeable on that. At the highway garage, supposedly Tim's colorblind. No joke. That's what he's claiming. So he thought it'd be nice to keep the new highway garage, the cold storage building, and wash bay building red to match the existing building, just to make the whole campus look similar. We may have had conversations on that. The manufacturer's subcontractor that's doing the metal buildings in the samples that they had available was only a bright red. And that's the color of it here. And we held it up against the existing building. And it's really bright. It scared me when I heard it. And I go, boy, Tim, you might not see a lot of difference there, but this is right. So everybody agreed to cast that out. And the 3 buildings across the road, we decided amongst our small group there, Tim, Matt, I don't know if Ryan may have been on the last job meeting and may have been part of that, or if he left beforehand, but the existing windows at the highway garage are medium bronze. So we know that at the new highway garage, cold storage, wash bay, we want to use medium bronze for our doorways, any windows that we have, and so forth. We've got on all our new buildings, including the maintenance shop behind DSS, we're going to take a split face concrete veneer up 4 feet, 40 inches or so, with a concrete cast cap, and then we've got metal siding above that. And that's just to protect the bottom from getting banged up and everything. So what we're proposing at the highway garage would be this hickory split face concrete brick from Taylor Concrete, metal siding from Metal Span. It's got a nice texture to it. It's an architectural panel. It's not a rib panel. It's going to be more of, so it's the same panel as Town and Bragg. If you've seen that, I think Kraft, somewhat embossed. And the profile actually, they haven't submitted yet, but the profile will be more kind of almost like a board and batten type, in and out, and then interlocking like that. Each panel, 24-inch panels or such that lock together. It's not going to look like a barn siding. It'll look more of what they call their architectural series. So we're suggesting this split face brick at the bottom, the sandstone siding with medium bronze windows. And I'll email out, I took some pictures of these today, and I'll email that out to the building committee. And probably what we'll do. Are we good to go with that and approve it to where we can get the contractor ordering everything, or?
That makes sense.
Yeah. I know Matt and Tim are fine with it right now. Right. So we'll get that going in order. But I'll also send out an email saying that this is what we discussed. That's it.
Good. Well, thank you very much.
We'll leave the shades for another day. We're down to the interior finishes. They submit on everything that we're going to use just to make sure that, that's what we want. So things are moving along over at the site on the highway garage. They're excavating, and we're waiting to hear from DOT. So no comments yet in the last week and a half. They were pretty
You mean on
interactive.
the location of the other cut-in?
Yeah.
I thought they had agreed to that.
They did, but they haven't given us
Oh,
any
the
comments.
official word? Okay.
Well, I'm sure they're going to have comments on it.
Yeah.
Which is acceptable. I hand delivered them over to Tom Campo a week ago this past Friday and talked to him a little bit. And, there's a few things he'd like to see, done and so forth, nothing major. It's pretty, I think we're in pretty good shape. We just need their comments. So I did talk to our engineers today, and I think I may have mentioned it briefly to Matt, if I haven't, now I am. We've got to issue those to the contractors, the revised drawings, because we told them that we're going to be moving the driveway location, but we haven't given them all the details, and they're starting to move earth, and we don't want them to have to. So I think what we'll do is come tomorrow at noon. As of 2:30, I hadn't heard back from DOT. We're going to issue them to the contractor, say start working up the cost to do it. If we get comments back from DOT, we'll pass those along as kind of like an addendum to the drawings that we're going to give them.
Patrick, are you gonna have enough bills down there? You're gonna need Phil? I just learned the hospital's got an excessive amount. They'd like to get rid of.
Yeah, we've got an excessive amount too. We've got 10,000 cubic yards. We're building a little Olympic ski ramp there over in the southwest corner of the site.
I lived in it yesterday when I drove by it. That's.
Yeah.
So do you need any?
No, we've got, we were trying to keep what we've got stored on site so it didn't have to be moved and relocated, because that's a lot of your feed areas. So Yeah.
Tested.
And tested if it goes off-site. Great. I'll pass it back over. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Patrick.
Let me know if you
Thanks,
have any
Patrick.
questions or anything.
Okay, I guess we're ready for docket.
The first docket is an introductory local law number 1-2022, a local law continuing an additional mortgage tax for mortgages on real property situated in Lewis County and setting the public hearing for June 7th, 2022.
Any questions or comments?
Is this new or is this continuation of the?
This is statutory that has to be done every 3 years. I think NISAC did try to push this along where it would be uniform throughout the state, but that didn't pass. So every 3 years, we have to pass this local law to get the additional tax that goes to the county on mortgages.
Continue the existing additional tax.
Okay, so it's just a continuation.
We're not raising the tax. No.
Okay.
Yeah. The way it's worded, it seems like we are.
Anything else? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Authorizing Lewis County Public Transportation to assist the Lewis County Fair with public shuttle services.
Questions or comments? All in favor, aye? Opposed? Carried.
Opposing the court restructuring plan proposed by the Chief Judge and Office of Court Administration.
Questions or comments? All in favor, aye? Opposed? Carried.
Appropriate funds in the CDBG accounts on behalf of the Planning Department in the amount of $4,128.18 from payback funds to be used for various community projects.
Any questions or comments? All in favor, aye? Opposed? Carried.
Authorizing grant application to Federal Emergency Management Agency for costs of a new generator at Lewis County Health Systems.
Questions or comments? All in favor, aye? Opposed? Carried.
Awarding bid and authorizing agreement between the County of Lewis and to be determined for CDBG CB grant program broadband wireless services at a cost of to be determined.
So if you don't mind, Tom, I'd like to explain the next three here. We issued our RFPs for the broadband projects. We've got the CDBG projects, which will cover broadband in the town of Lionsdale and Diana. We also have the Northern Border Regional Commission project, which will cover the towns of Denmark, Pinckney, Harrisburg, and into some Jefferson County. We got very good proposals back from wireless internet providers. The Development Authority is still vetting these. We've had 2 meetings with them, one last Thursday and one yesterday, to go over all the proposals. Cassie and the team at DANK are really going in depth. They're interviewing the companies that have submitted proposals. Additionally, we're calling references. So we don't have the vendor or the amount for today, but we will have a recommended vendor and amount for the May 3rd meeting. We just wanted to make sure it's still, you guys understood it's, we're working on it. And if you don't mind passing it with a TBD, by the time we get to May 3rd, we'll have those blanks filled in. Cassie, is that pretty much?
Yeah, we're almost, I would say 90% sure of who we're gonna go with, but we wanna do that last due diligence, especially with the end user component. We wanna ensure that we're picking the very best proposal based upon the impacts to the end user. So that's what those first 2 are. The third one, we should have everything for, that should be for the structural analysis, but yeah, they just would like a round of discussion with all 3 of the proposals that we received for the broadband services to make sure that, yes, on paper, this is the likely source, but we have a few questions.
Right, so it's one thing to be able to install this wireless equipment. it's another thing to provide continuing ongoing customer service to the households that are gonna be utilizing the new internet. So that's, I think, mostly where our questions are, you know, what type of service are we gonna expect up here? How many employees, you know, what's your call centers like and all that kind of stuff.
And making sure the equipment is apples to apples, because some of the proposals had really, really like top-notch equipment, and the other ones were pretty basic. So we just wanna make sure that it really is apples to apples there.
So basically, we pass these and the board meeting will have specific names and numbers.
Correct. Yep. We thought maybe we'd have it by now, but not quite.
Any other questions or comments on the first one? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Number 7 is awarding bid and authorizing agreement between the County of Lewis and TBD for Northern Border Regional Commission Grant Program Broadband Wireless Services at a cost of TBD.
Questions or comments? All in favor, aye? Opposed? Carried.
Awarding bid and authorizing agreement between the County of Lewis and TBD for NBRC/CDBG-CB Grant Program Telecommunication Structural Analysis Services at a cost of TBD.
Questions or comments? All in favor, aye? Opposed? Carried.
Authorizing deposits with New York Class and adding this investment entity to the county's designated depository and institutions.
Any questions or comments? All in favor, aye? Opposed? Carried.
Authorizing one-time final distribution to certain villages to assist in water, sewer, infrastructure expenses and improvement costs.
Questions or comments? All in favor, aye? Opposed? Carried.
Authorizing retainer agreement with Harris Beach PLLC as bond legal counsel services.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
And the last one is authorizing the issuance of up to $600,000 aggregate principal amount serial bonds for the County of Lewis, State of New York, pursuant to the local finance law to finance the costs of the acquisition of machinery and apparatus for construction and maintenance for the county highway department.
This was a late resolution.
Did you title that one, Joan?
I cut it down from what Jeff Stewart did.
So the issue here is that the last few years, we've been on our equipment plan with Highway Department, we've been using key bank financing. And in fact, we just did a resolution for them for a piece of equipment a few months ago. But interest rates have gotten so high, and our quotes from Key Bank are above 5% at this point. If we do a small bond, more or less, just for 5 years, or I don't know, Joan, you might have to explain the details, but basically, we're able to save quite a bit on interest, like $13,000 on interest by doing a small bond rather than financing through Key Bank for a lease. So
Yeah, and really Brian and Tim worked on this to bring it to our attention that we can do, it's basically an installment bond. It's not like the $50 million bond. The intention is still to pay it off within 5 years, which is what Tim generally does with the purchase lease agreements with Key Bank. But these rates, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, but Brian's looked at some, and actually some local banks will also be interested in this. But we could see rates between 2.25 up to 2.75, which is at least 2.5 points less than what the purchase lease agreements are going for now.
Yeah, it's good for short-term borrowing right now.
Yeah.
The bond market is really good comparable to the long-term, the $50 million bond, it's higher. So it's actually in our favor for short-term.
Should we borrow it at all? Should we just fund it out of fund balance?
we could, go there.
Well, I think that's kind of been a transition we made over the last number of years to lease these pieces of equipment. I think it schedules it out more from a budgetary standpoint to have annual lease payments instead of every 2 or 3 years we spend X thousand on it for an outlay of cash.
It's all part of Tim Huff's plan.
Capital.
I think we've constrained ourselves with the 200, our equipment budget for solid waste has been for years, $200,000 a year. Recently, we've upped it to almost 300. In doing so, we're able to get more new equipment and we just cycle it through. So, we buy something for, a new truck for 300 grand. We put in the budget for 5 years, $50,000 a year. That helps us keep things newer. Whereas when we buy outright, one piece of equipment takes up the whole $300,000 budget. So it's been our way to maintain our fleet without, going over that $300,000 a year. So you could pay cash, it's just different philosophy than what we've been doing.
I didn't realize so we're funding lease payments with this is what we're doing.
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
I-
And we budget those lease payments in the annual capital plan.
We've got it set up right now where basically we're on a 5-year cycle where we buy a plow truck and then in 5 years it gets replaced. So once we pay, the lease off, we can enroll that equity in the next one. And so on.
So it's actually, and you've got it set up 6 years, so you're actually paying on 5, and not the last year's, you're not paying on it, and then you're selling it, taking the equity, rolling over to the next truck. So you're gonna be a lot smaller going forward. Right now, we're at the supply chain, there's 3 trucks on order. 1 might come this year, 2 maybe next.
They're all hitting at the same time. Yeah, that's part of the issue.
So because it's a short-term bond as well, the fee from the bond council would be less than $5,000. So we've been factoring in that cost. It's still, we're gonna be saving money by getting that lower interest rate, for this equipment. So that's the reason why we voted for it to come.
All right. Any other questions or comments? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Tom, I accidentally missed one. Authorizing vacant property revitalization program and transfer of funds.
I seen that, I was wondering why we skipped.
It was my fault.
Okay, no problem. Any questions or comments on that? Number 3 on our first page.
Was that, what we were kind of briefed on last time, the time before?
That's the presentation that Cassie and Brittany did last month.
Now, it says, town, village, hamlets, and centers. So is that for, I take it that something out in the country doesn't qualify? Is that how I read that?
Yes, it's really intended to be where business hubs are in any of the towns or villages, and not just Loudon. That's why we try to, use those descriptions for, or that's the intention from my understanding of what the program is for.
So I chatted with Brittany, IDA, a little bit about this, and the devil will be in the details on this. The intention is to redevelop basically commercial space in downtown areas. So they're gonna set up a point system to make these awards. There needs to be a public benefit for the investment to happen. And it needs to be in commercial space to try to attract businesses into downtown. So, it needs to be detailed exactly what's gonna happen with this, which I think would happen. They have to draw up, a proposal for the point system, proposal for the structure of the program. And I think at that point, they could bring that back to us for final approval of this. Now, originally, we had set aside $1 million with the ARPA fund for property demolition, the cheese factory. That's how we did the brick block in Turin. So Brittany, the original presentation was to shift that $1 million plus another $1 million into this property redevelopment concept. I think it's important that we continue the cleanup process. So I asked Ryan and Brittany, to split that, leave the $1 million that we had in the ARPA fund, I think it was, in property development, and then take $1 million out of our fund balance and fund this section of it, or this program here, so that we would not lose. And that was the original conversation with the Board of Legislators, was that, we're gonna take $1 million worth of ARPA funding to do property cleanup. And I think that's important to leave that in place, but this is also important also, but I think, that the program needs to be outlined and defined of exactly what space is going to be eligible for the program, how much of the weighting goes towards public benefit, commercial space, and how the whole thing is going to come together.
That was kind of my concern, because the last that we were briefed on, it seemed like there wasn't any set of guidelines. It was,
Just a 30,000 foot level of concept.
Right, it was, which, unless you have guidelines, it tends to be, I think, abuse possible, potential abuse if there's no guidelines to say this is what you need to do.
There's other things like, how much of this, what's the match gonna be? Are we gonna fund 50% of the applicant's project? Are we, is there a match? Do they have to hold on to the property? Like, if you have work done by snow belt, they fix your house up, you have to keep the house for 7 years, or else you have to pay back whatever prorated portion of the funding. I think that stuff needs to be identified.
So that's all coming still. That's my concern, that it's still.
Yes, that is, all those aspects of the program have been yet to be defined.
Okay.
We're just trying to basically move the money and get things rolling here. I think a good comparison to this would be the facade program that we ran through the planning department last fall. That we had very specific criteria for each applicant to meet. We had a very specific scoring mechanism that was done by an independent team. We had people from the Historical Society, we had people from Economic Development, we had people from planning, we had a legislator. So we could justify each award. Somebody says, well, how come, Larry got awarded and Tom didn't? We can justify, precisely with a scoring document that shows, well, the Historical Society only gave you 2 points because you're going to use vinyl siding to cover up, traditional wood, things like that. So we need to develop those tools so that we're able to justify each award appropriately. I think the other key word in, or thought process with this project is, Brittany kind of said, Ryan, wouldn't it be great to get involved with some of these buildings before they become eyesores that the county then has to act to tear down? And so, I'm not saying we're going to be pleased with any of, that any of these building owners have let their property get to the state that it's in. But the reality is, when nobody does anything with the brick block for 25 years, we end up with it anyway. When nobody does anything with some of these downtown buildings in Laval, and I've been in the second and third floors, they are in rough shape. when nobody does anything, they're gonna end up in our lap for just as much money anyway. So Brittany's point was, what if we tried to work with some of these building owners to secure their, especially if they're high impact downtown buildings, secure their futures so that we aren't left holding the bag on a building that burns down or the roof caves in or whatever else it may be. So that was, I think, the shift from property cleanup to maybe a little more proactive. And then I like Larry's idea of, okay, let's be proactive and still, clean up some properties as well. The only thing that Larry said that I would correct is that this project is gonna have ARPA funds and the property cleanup will be from fund balance. And the reason for that is the ARPA funds have to be spent in 2 years and we can ensure the money's gonna go out the door with this project. Where cleanup projects, as we learned over the years, can sometimes drag on for multiple years. So it makes more sense to use ARPA money for this.
I couldn't remember which one.
And the only other thing that I would add is that I know from initial reaction from the presentation that there was a little bit of concern from some legislators that it's all gonna be focused in Loudville. And I think we have to be very mindful of that and maybe that group has to really look at how are we gonna provide for this in all of the hamlets or the downtown areas throughout.
When we did the facade program, the geographic spread was part of the ranking system. So.
Yeah.
Or maybe we should identify that half the money gets spent with Loudville and the other half gets spread around the rest of the county.
We can do that. So what I'm hearing is we want to invite Brittany back with a lot of these specific, with a program booklet. Well, that's kind of how we did facade. We came first to pitch the plan, got it started, and then Cassie came back with the program specific. So I think they need to come back with a booklet that kind of has, here's all those things that we've been talking about. Here's how we're going to handle the program. So.
Sounds good. Any other questions or comments on that one? If not, all in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, carried. That covers all the resolutions. We have an executive session.
Yeah, just a short executive session on the potential of property acquisition.
You need a motion to move to executive session? Jeff, second.
You're up again.
Yeah.
We'll fight for it.
All in favor, aye? Aye. We're in executive